Welcome everyone to the final Cannes Daily press conference for our closing reflections on Bonn SB62 and a look at what now needs to happen on the road to COP30. Our panel takes stock of where we've landed and where we must go next. We look back on Bonn's failures and achievements and we preview the next steps on the road to Belém. So our speakers are Jacobo Ocharan, Anabella Rosemberg, Karla Maass and Claudio Angelo. And I invite Jacobo Ocharan to speak first. Please, Jacobo.
Hi, good morning to all. We are on the 628th day of the genocide. We are on the 110th day of the Israeli siege to Gaza, starving people to death. While we have been here these 10 days in Bonn, over 600 Palestinians have been killed by Israel in Palestine. A unilateral attack war of US and Israel has been started in Iran, and the death toll counting is 1,000 people and mounting. And not far from here in the Netherlands, this week, the bully crossed the Atlantic and said to all the NATO members that they need to raise their military expenditure up to 5% of their budgets, which is an incredible figure in a context where they tell us that there is no money for climate finance. So in all this context, we, the civil society, are trying to fight for climate justice. And we have been saying it in the last days, the host in the UNFCCC is not putting things easy for us to do this fight, to be sure that we are bringing the demands of civil society to these halls. Last week, a red line was clearly crossed when we were not allowed to say within these corridors, end the siege, as I say, when it's been over 100 days. Okay, and to us, what it was the most astonishing thing is that plenty of UN agencies and UN leaders have already spoke about the siege and have called for the end of the siege. So we said last week, and we repeat it today, this is clearly an exercise of operations, an exercise of no needed power, okay, that definitely we are pushing back. Nevertheless, in this context, of course, where we sometimes call it, we call the outside the real world, but in this context and in this corridor, we have the feeling that we are living Bonn with enough and important preparatory work done for Belém COP30. Okay, so of course there are more positives and negatives within the work that has been done, and you will hear now from Just Transition and Adaptation particularly. But we think that what is intended to happen here, which is to be doing all this preparatory work, to have papers and to, as we call them, is been done. But of course, that leaves us also the parties with a huge pile of homework, okay, to be sure and to be done, and to make sure that COP30 is a successful COP. Okay, so we definitely urge the parties to keep working on these lines. We particularly raise our worriness about the NDCs and how the NDCs, we are pretty certain that they are not going to meet ambition, meeting by ambition, meaning by ambition, not just 1.5, but having just transition plans, having adaptation goals, obviously protecting human rights. So Belém's success will depend on the capacity of the parties to be sure that the work that they do in the way to Belém and at Belém is still relevant for ordinary people, and they are able to reconnect with the real world. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacobo. And now Anabella Rosemberg.
Thank you so much, Attila. At a time of violence, genocide, conflict, all the context that Jacobo was bringing to the table. So in that times, many might wonder what a meaningful outcome of the climate regime could look like. The Climate Action Network, working in solidarity with trade unions, with indigenous peoples, with feminist groups, with youth, with social and climate justice groups, is picking a fight that has been floating in many of these rooms for far too long, and is the fight for just transition. 10 years ago, the Paris Agreement committed to a just transition, and yet justice is nowhere to be seen. Multiple initiatives are labeled now just transition, just energy transition, but they are all leaving workers and communities outside. We are also seeing countries, in particular in the Global South, struggling to see what their pathway to prosperity looks like. The rules have been set at the global level to keep them extracting, but then we blame them for doing what the rules are asking them to do. So there is an opening with the negotiations here. We have an opening for Belém to create a mechanism, a global mechanism that delivers for working people and that support those that want to make just transition happen. Our mobilization, as I said, across civil society, social movements, unions, and many more, is only starting. The movement to fight for a just transition is rising. Thank you.
Thank you, Anabella. Nice and brief. Thank you. And now, Karla Maass.
Thank you, Attila, and thanks everyone for being in the room. In Bonn, we witnessed negotiations that truly assemble every piece of the puzzle required for a robust adaptation agenda. We have been engaged in discussions on national adaptation plans, on adaptation fund, on Nairobi work program, on adaptation reporting, on governance, and of course the long-term vision through the global goal on adaptation with both concrete technical discussions on indicators but a broader strategic frame. But we also have seen an alarming trend of lacking to ensure provision of finance. It is clear we are already seeing the consequences of an NCQG that diluted developed countries' obligations and shifts responsibilities onto the Global South. This shortfall has resulted in procedural outcomes on NAPs and has blocked real progress on the GGA. In fact, negotiations were still running just an hour ago, with parties struggling to find a ground to move from technical discussions to political decisions that are needed to enable real adaptation actions in the ground. Even this, when the UN system itself warns that there's a huge adaptation finance gap between what is needed and what has been committed. Indeed, according to the UNEP, even doubling adaptation finance as pledged by developed countries under the Glasgow Pact would only close around 5% of the estimated gap, underscoring just how far we are from meeting the real scope of adaptation finance and how urgent it is to go beyond pledges and deliver transformative public grant-based finance. The GGA, the Global Goal on Adaptation, has established a year ago in the Paris Agreement, but progress is limited. In Bonn, the current discussions are basically technical around the indicator. While this is important, of course, it's nothing without clear means of implementation and adequate financing. Still, developed countries are being pushed to exclude any adaptation finance target in the process, despite they are fully aware that the Global South countries would need quality resources to bring into life what is stated in the Article 7 of the Paris Agreement. To illustrate the urgency, considering the adaptation challenge in Latin America, my region, Anna's region, Claudio's region, regional assessment highlight that escalating climate impacts. We have seen water scarcity in the Andeans highlight. We have seen drought in the Chaco, in the North Brazil, floating coasts in Central America, all demanding resilient infrastructure, early warning system, and robust implementation of the NAPs, yet finance faced by hundreds of billions. Without step-up support, our nation will struggle to adapt at the pace needed and proactively. We will witness even more suffering in a world that cannot take one more drop. Against that backdrop, the COP presidency takes a huge task, delivering real transformation outcome on adaptation in Belém. This is not about delivering the indicator. It is about making sure that its implementation will be guided by new adaptation target once the Glasgow mandate to double its adaptation finance is over this year, and a robust modalities for Belém adaptation roadmap, a framework that enables concrete planning, monitoring, learning, effective implementation boosted by adequate means of implementation and accountability mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Karla. And now, Claudio, Angelo.
Thank you. I know everybody came here searching for answers, but I'm going to disappoint you all and leave you with more questions. Instead, I know it's unusual, like the times we're living in. We can say about the presidency that it might have passed its first presidency test here in Bonn. Brazil came to Bonn with a strategy to leave premises here with 3 texts on adaptation, or 3 broad decisions that could be taken to Belém on adaptation, just transition, and the UAE dialogue on implementing the GST. We may get 2 out of 3, maybe, which is not bad. What Brazil didn't expect to happen in Bonn was for the finance fight to take up so much space in these talks. Bonn, in some ways, became a replay of Baku. So I think the first question for us to ponder and for the presidency to lose sleep over is how much Belém will be Baku 2.0. What kind of consultations will be made around 9.1, the famed Article 9.1, the finance that has not been delivered by rich countries. So how much this fight will evolve until Belém, and what the presidency and of course the international community will make out of it. The second question may be the most important of all. What will be the political response to NDCs? 3 months from now, we will have the NDCs from the 3 major emitters that are still in the Paris Agreement: China, India, the European Union. We already know they won't be sufficient to breach to close the ambition gap. And we need a political response to the insufficiency of NDCs. And the question may be now, will Belém be the COP where we finally close the ambition gap, or will Belém be the COP where we lost, when we acknowledged the loss of the 1.5 target of the Paris Agreement? The third question is one that should never need to be asked in those halls, is that will people show up in the end? As we have seen those days here, logistics became an issue disproportionately huge for COP30. Its inclusivity has been called into question because of the surreal prices of accommodation and the lack of accommodation in Belém. So will attendance be shrunk due to logistics restrictions? Or will Brazil use its famous improvisation capacity to sort everything out in the 11th hour? I'll leave it here, and I hope to see you all in Belém. Prices are high, but the food is great. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudio. So thank you to our speakers, and that we have time for questions. So please put your hands up if you have questions. If you can identify yourself, your organization, and keep your question brief. The microphone is coming to the gentleman over here.
Hello, Alistair Thompson from Scoop Media, New Zealand. The elephant in the room here seems to be the complete failure of Europe to step up to its task and instead decide to spend billions and billions on, well, possibly, yeah, hundreds of billions on weapons instead of climate. And at the same time, we've also had them blocking 9.1 and essentially, I don't know, stalling the negotiations around activating some of the donations. Now, when America decided to just, I mean, we knew that Trump doesn't believe in climate change. We knew they were walking away. That created a situation where if anyone is going to be able to protect this process, it needs to be Europe, and they seem to have abdicated. My understanding is that there's a development conference in Spain, and MEPs voted in the parliament to not attend it, and so the Spanish Development Conference about development finance is not going to be attended by anybody from the European Union. So they're even abandoning one of their own countries. I'd like your reaction to that.
No, one at a time.
Yeah, sure. I think I named it at the beginning. I mean, the fact that while these SBs are happening, the NATO has met, I don't know the number of kilometers, but 200 kilometers from here, 300 kilometers from here, okay? And as I say, the bully closed the Atlantic, okay, just to tell NATO countries, mostly European governments, you need to raise your national budgets, your military expenditure in your national budgets up to 5%, which is incredible. And some countries are pushing back, very proudly Spain, I need to say in this case. I think leaves clearly the European leaders and the European countries naked because they have said, most of them, yes, yes, yes. Okay, they've been hiding behind many years the US in these negotiation rooms, and now there is not any curtain to hide behind. Okay, so yes, definitely, and I think the situation for the FFD4 conference in Sevilla is very well pictured. It seems, to the disappointment again of the Spanish government, that well, it seems no, it's clear that the conclusions are done even before the conference has started. Okay, so there is no high expectations there, but still, obviously, we need to. I mean, we keep targeting and we need to raise our targeting to the European governments and to the European Union in these halls.
This lady here. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Claudio Antunes. I am from Sumauma website in Brazil. I have a question for Anabella. In terms of the Just Transition Plan, I heard that one of the demands is that it's accompanied by a plan of implementation. And I would like to know the position of you and how that plan would be. I would also like to ask Claudio about the GST. It seems there will be no tax on the GST. And also ask Claudio how, if there is a mechanism or how this assessment of the gap in ambition can be discussed in Belém. I think there's two questions. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. We have been fighting for the past 2 years the idea that this process, the UNFCCC process, should not be only about having dialogues and producing reports. Because in the end, like what we have seen in the past few years is that for each agenda item, we have dialogues and we have reports. So our bet, also in a context where everyone is talking about the importance of reforming UNFCCC, I think we should not go very far in looking for ideas. The most important idea is how we deliver to the things that have been committed. So for us in Just Transition, what we are saying is that we need to put in place a delivery mechanism, something that brings together a lot of actors that are already doing this, align them to the Paris Agreement and the principles of the Paris Agreement. So it's 1.5, but it's also common but differentiated responsibilities and equity as well. So aligned with the Paris Agreement, and then a very simple way for getting communities, territories, countries that want to make Just Transition happen, a first desk of support where they can actually access a huge amount of different tools and guidelines and support and capacity funds that exist out there, but right now it's just too difficult for them to access. So it's a first step. It's not going to change dramatically the lives of workers and communities, but it gives us a really good signal about what this process should be about. It's about finding consensus, but then acting upon those agreed points. And Just Transition could be that, well, that first way, I mean, this first part of the response of the UNFCCC system to the questioning of its, well, its impact in the real world.
Thank you, Claudio.
Yeah, Claudia, I did an exercise this morning. I put the GST text on ChatGPT and asked it to remove the square bracketed text. And it shrunk from 6 pages to less than half a page. So it gives you an idea where we are. It's too early to tell. 12:30, they will be convening. We may or may not, brackets, get a decision here on the GST. It's not looking like a decision will be made, but we are at a time anything can happen. So stay tuned. On the response, if I understood your question, how the response to the NDCs is reflected, it's not. There's no formal place in any negotiation tracks to respond to NDCs because it's nationally determined, blah, blah, blah. But of course we need one. This may be a task for the circle of former presidencies to do some report on the insufficiency of NDCs. This may be something that the Leaders Summit might explore, or this may be something, I know it's too early to tell, Brazil hates the idea, but this might be something for a cover decision, among other issues such as fossil fuels, such as, I don't know, some finance, adaptation finance. But still, Brazil doesn't like to talk about cover decisions. It hates cover decisions ever since Glasgow. But you know, cover decisions are like fanny packs. Everybody thinks it's ugly. I will never wear one until the time comes you need one and you see how useful it is. Thank you.
Next question for anybody with or without a fanny pack.
The what?
Come on, I saw some other hands up earlier. Go next question. We've got time. Anybody? This lady here, Sandra.
Okay, there's still some...
Say your name and your organization.
for African News Analyst. So there's still some negotiation going on, and rumor has it could also go into the night. What are the topics that are still discussed, and maybe what could still be decided here? I mean, you mentioned 3 items. So what's right now in discussion?
Jacobo.
So as we have been saying, on adaptation is still on discussion. I think Karla has explained well, but I think it's important that that we take in mind that what is important on adaptation is the political fight, not the technical fight on the indicators. And the political fight particularly on adaptation finance, okay? In a context where the commitment from Glasgow, which was doubling adaptation finance, it was for 5 years, so we are to meet it and to reconsider or to raise it, hopefully in Belém, is quite important. It's very important that we we don't have high expectations, but as we have here, that we get out of Bonn. I don't even know where I am now, but we get out of Bonn, okay, with at least the clear earmarking where the fight is. When we are talking about indicators, it is on means of implementation, and it is on adaptation finance. Okay. Which one says?
What's still open?
Still open, yeah.
We have a gender action plan. I mean, that is still open for conversation, and we are hearing with concern that some parties are opposing what was looking quite promising in terms of the gender action plan. As you know, it's an unusual conversation because they are listing a 10-year plan, I mean, for gender actions that connect to a lot of the other agendas. This is about gender and just transition. This is about gender and finance. This is about enabling environments for women's rights. I mean, it's a very fascinating conversation, and it did look until yesterday that it was going okay, but today we are hearing that there are some elements shaking there, so certainly still open until the plenary starts. There is the conversation on the GST, as Claudio said. The mitigation work program is still open, but that one is not looking very promising. And there is response measures that we will never end well, as per practice.
So time for at least one more question. Yes? No, go on.
Well, okay. So just a clarification, because I saw yesterday the test on gender action plan. Everyone was thinking it was very good. So finally, who reopened the discussion?
We were not in the plenary in that conversation. What we are hearing is that there are a few parties that have not really been following the negotiation that have intervened. So yeah, we need to see. I mean, in general, parties that have been working on the gender action plan from across the spectrum have been working on this text. It has a lot of support. So we are hopeful that this is going to go through and see a good gender action plan approved in Belém. So we are not necessarily raising huge alarm, but it's still open, and we are hoping it to land as a draft like in the next couple of hours.
So shall we leave it there? One last question? No? Thank you to our panel. Thank you to all of you here and on the live stream for joining us. That's almost everything over from us at Bonn. So thank you very much indeed.
Oh, just one more thing. Please repeat with me, Belém, not Belém.